The 30th President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, was known as Silent Cal because it was very difficult to get 2 words out of him. Whenever he did open his mouth, however, those few words were memorable. One Sunday, when Calvin was a little boy, he returned home from church, and his father asked him what the minister had preached about. Calvin said, "Sin." The father asked, "Yes, and what did he have to say about sin?" Calvin replied, "He was against it." Sometimes we talk so much about sin that it has come to define our whole concept of religion, our whole way of looking at God. For some people, sin has become the defining element of faith. We have a supreme consciousness of sinfulness all around us, especially the sinfulness of others. We love to point our finger at other people and say, "You sinner." Isn't that fun? Christians do it all the time. There are those who use and abuse the beautiful sacrament of reconciliation, that sacrament which was meant to be just that, a loving reconciliation with God and others when we need it. But so many use it as a way of reinforcing their own scrupulosity. There are even those who refuse to receive communion without going to confession every single time. These are not healthy attitudes, and certainly do not reflect an understanding of the loving embrace of God. The essence of Christianity is not sin. The essence of Christianity, just as the essence of God, is love. All too many have lost that understanding. But let's not just point our fingers at ourselves as Catholics. The classic Protestant view of the world is much darker, a view which culminated perhaps in the 18th century American preacher Jonathan Edwards, who wrote that most famous of American sermons, "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," in which he vividly and frighteningly portrays a wrathful God who dangles us sinners over the fires of hell and can't wait to drop us into those everlasting flames. What sort of idea do we have of God? And what sort of idea do we have of ourselves? The first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, does not begin with that titillating story of the apple and the snake and the first sin. That doesn't come until chapter 3. No, it begins with a loving God creating all things out of love. It begins with the repeated recognition that it is good. This is where our faith, our relationship with God should begin, not with sin, but with love. Yet what a false picture of God, and what a perversion of Christianity we have developed. Indeed, by the 18th century, the great German scholar Karl Wilhelm Friedrich Schlegel had to say, "The essential point of view of Christianity is sin." How different from the attitude of the early church. Now, of course, sin is very interesting. It fascinates us, especially the type of sins we love to talk about. The Pharisees of Jesus' day were fond of pointing fingers. They seemed obsessed with finding sin everywhere. Some things never change. As always, Jesus saw through their hypocrisy and called them out for it. There is indeed sin, he pointed out, but it is not where you are seeing it. In our own day, too, there is a lot of sin in the world, but it is not where we tend to see it. The real sin, the only real sin, is the lack of love. And it is that dreadful sin that is consuming and destroying humanity often in the disguise of religion. Let us be aware of our littleness, our imperfection, and yes, our sinfulness. But let us first be aware of the heights to which, through the grace of God, we are capable of achieving. Let us not begin by turning to ourselves and exclaiming, "How evil am I?" But let us rather turn to God first and sing, "How great thou art." And we will find ourselves not merely cleansed, but lifted up, overwhelmed, utterly consumed by God's all-powerful love.